so good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from, everybody. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. If you're joining us for the first time, I know we have some new folks joining us today. We are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world through free, live, interactive broadcasts. And boy, have we been busy. If you guys have been joining us since September 13th, we have done 120 sessions with scientists and explorers around the world. So thank you all so much for joining us live and on YouTube as we continue to showcase and celebrate such amazing people. Now, the entire month of November has been made possible by the Gardner Foundation. So we've been doing 15 programs with them over the past year and a half. You can check out all those sessions on our YouTube channel on biomedical and health research from around the globe. Some really, really cool stuff. And you'll see their logo in the background throughout the duration of the broadcast. Now, today we are bringing back a special speaker from our Week of Wonder. In September, we had programs at 20 science centers coast to coast across Canada featuring all sorts of great stories. And my very favorite one was at the Fraser River Discovery Centre. And Danika is joining us from there in British Columbia today to talk about sit spots. You know, you don't need to go all the way around the world to seek out nature, to engage with it and have a meaningful experience out in the wild. You can do that really close to home, right in your backyard, schoolyard, all sorts of great places. So Danika is going to walk through today a little bit about how you guys can do that with the concept of a sit spot. I'm very excited. You guys sure are too. Welcome in on YouTube and live. And Danika, thank you so much for joining us today, and take us away.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today. As Jesse said, my name is Danika, and I'm calling in today to you from beautiful New Westminster in British Columbia, right along the banks of the Fraser River, which we're going to get to see in a little bit throughout our program. So I am going to try to share my screen, but my browser has just decided not to let me do that. So give me 2 seconds. Here we go. And we're in. So today we're going to be chatting about sit spots. What is a sit spot and how do you do a sit spot? Before we dive into sit spots, I'd like to acknowledge that the Fraser River Discovery Centre is located on the traditional territory of the Hunkamalum and Hulkamalum speaking peoples. And that territory acknowledgement is just one small part of reconciliation. So please take a moment, maybe after the program today, to think about other ways that you can participate in reconciliation with Indigenous communities. The Fraser River Discovery Centre, as none of you are calling in today from BC, I'll give you a little backstory on it. It is the voice of the Fraser River. So we attempt to represent stories from all around the Fraser River, sharing about the life, history, and future of British Columbia. Our vision is for a living, working Fraser River with healthy, happy people all the way along from the headwaters to the Salish Sea. And our mission is to bring together diverse voices to celebrate the Fraser. Now, we like to share stories about the Fraser River from the 3 main pillars of sustainability. So those are environmental, economic, and sociocultural, which all work together. The Fraser River is a super important environmental river. So it is home to the endangered white sturgeon, which is an incredible fish that can live to be 100 years old and grow up to be 6 meters long, or about 9 feet, which is a remarkable fish. It is also home in the Fraser River Delta. It's a vital habitat to hundreds of different species of migratory birds. In the Gravel Reach, which is a very cool part of the Fraser River, there's over 30 different species of fish that all live there, and it is one of the largest salmon spawning rivers in the world. It's a very important economic river as well, so there are global imports and exports coming in and out of the river every single day. There's commercial fishing and tourism and hydroelectricity, as well as the transportation of natural resources up and down the river. And finally, it's a vital sociocultural river, meaning that because it runs, it's a huge river and it goes right out into the ocean, it physically connects British Columbia and Canada to the rest of the world. The Fraser River Basin is home to immigrants from all around the globe, and it has been home to Indigenous peoples since time immemorial, with a huge diversity of cultures and languages represented. On to the topic at hand. So what is a sit spot? Well, it's a spot where you sit. And while you're sitting there, you make observations about the natural world. A sit spot is also a place that you return to many, many times over a long period of time. And returning over and over again helps you really get to know that place and make all kinds of remarkable observations about the natural world. How do you pick your sit spot? Well, there's a few things you want to look for. Your sit spot should be close to home or close to your school and easy to get to. You may have a really spectacular view from the top of the mountain, but how often are you really going to make that hike? If it's close to home or close to your school, you're going to be able to go there all the time. It should be filled with natural elements, but this doesn't mean that it has to be right in the middle of a forest or a wilderness. There's plenty of natural elements that you can find in a city. Think about all the birds you might see while waiting at the bus stop, or think about all the plants that push up through sidewalk cracks. There's tons of nature if you just look for it all over the place. It should be a place where you can be alone. There could be people around you, but you should still be able to find a little spot where you can sit by yourself and make observations quietly. The last two are maybe the most important. It should be safe, very important, and it also should be a place that you find interesting. And that last one, because we're all going to find different places interesting, you might have a different sit spot than someone else, and you might want to go to see different places than someone else. That's totally okay. There is no perfect sit spot. There's just a perfect sit spot for you. Now, what do you need to bring to your sit spot? Well, the only things that are absolutely vital, necessary for you to bring are a place for you to record your observations, like a notebook, a journal, a clipboard, or and pencils, pens, etc. You have to have some place to record your observations, but there's a lot of other things that you might find useful as well. So you might bring a plastic bag to put over your notebook if you live in a rainy place like I do, to make sure your notes don't get all wet. A voice recorder can be super helpful as well. This can allow you to make observations while you're at your sit spot and then record them in your notebook later. A camera or a phone with a camera can be a really great way to record all the different things you're seeing. A magnifying glass is a great way to look at things that are very small. If you know how to use them, identification books and identification guides can be a great way to learn the names of the things that you're seeing around you. And finally, you may also want to bring a small bag for ethically collecting small items. Now, if you haven't heard the phrase ethical collecting before, I would encourage you to look it up on your own time. But the highlight of it is that when you are collecting things from nature, you want to make sure that you are doing no harm by taking that thing out of nature. And finally, you'll probably stay at your sit spot a lot longer if you're comfortable while you're there. So make sure you have seasonally appropriate clothing, warm jackets in the winter, sun hats in the summer. You may want to bring something dry to sit on, again, if you live in a rainy place like I do, but that could just be something as simple as a garbage bag. And I know that I always stay at my sit spot a lot longer when I brought snacks, drinks, tea, something to keep me going while I'm there. Now, what should you do at your sit spot? Well, every time you go to your sit spot, the very first thing you need to do is to write down the date, the time, and the weather. Now, these three pieces of information are so important. Maybe some of the most important things you're going to write down in your sit spot notebook. These three things are so vital because you are going to see and observe completely different things at your sit spot depending on the season of the year, the time of day or night, and what kind of weather there is. And by recording that information in your sit spot, it also means that then you can go back later and make comparisons between different entries in your sit spot notebook. For example, you could look at every time you went to your sit spot at 4 o'clock and see if things were different across the seasons at 4 o'clock. Or you could compare within the same season, but at different times of the day. So that really allows us to get scientific about your observations and to make those comparisons and contrasts. Now, what are the things you can actually do at your sit spot once you've written down the date, the time, and the weather? All kinds of things. You could make observations. You could listen to the sounds around you. You could track changes. For example, maybe in the spring, you see a plant starting to grow. What if you draw it every day as it's growing for the first month? You could conduct experiments, all kinds of experiments you could do out there. You could make art. Really, it's up to you what kinds of observations you want to engage with while you're at your sit spot. Just make sure you're following your curiosity and doing something that you find interesting. If you want more specific techniques on things that you could do in your sit spot, we're going to go through 3 together today. And you can also visit our YouTube channel for tons of videos on how to do different things at your sit spot. So let's get ready to do our first sit spot activity together. So if you haven't already, please make sure you've got paper and a pencil with you. That's going to allow you to do our next 3 activities together. The first thing we're going to do is called a sound map. And it's just like it sounds. We are going to make a map of the sounds around us. So, as I just mentioned, at the top of your paper, you're going to need to write down the date, the time, and the weather. We're just doing sort of a practice one together today. So if you want to just make up the weather, no worries. And then you're going to put an X right in the center of the paper. This represents you. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can draw your sound map. I've got 3 examples here on the screen. So on the right, the left, you can see that I have drawn different colors and different line shapes to represent sort of the quality of the sounds that I was hearing around me. In the center, you can see that I've used words to describe the different sounds. And there on the right, I've got X's of different sizes to show where the sounds were and how loud they were relative to where I was sitting. Now, we are going to be doing a virtual one today, meaning I'm going to, in a moment, show you a video, which will have lots of sounds in it. And we're going to make sound maps based on that video. Obviously, all the sounds just going to be coming out of your speakers today, but you can imagine where those sounds might be coming from, if they're from behind the camera or from in front of the camera. So we'll use a little bit of our imaginations to help us out with that one today. So in a moment, we're going to play the video. It's about 2 minutes long, and we're going to make some sound maps. So Jesse, if you could play the marsh video. All right, so we'll go back to sharing my screen. Hopefully you got some great observations down on those sound maps. I know I heard all kinds of different things in the background there. So the second thing we're going to try together is called observational sketching. Now, observational, you can see it's got the word observation in there and sketching like drawing, but this is not just any drawing. In fact, this is very different from drawing a picture because we don't actually care what the picture you draw looks like. It doesn't have to be a beautiful work of art. The entire point of observational sketching is to make observations. So take that voice out of your brain that's telling you you're not good enough, tuck it away, and just focus in on making observations with me. So we are going to draw the same thing 3 times in a row, and we're going to draw it for slightly longer amounts of time each drawing. This is going to allow us to look closer, to look even closer, and finally to look so close that we notice all the different things happening in the object we're looking at. So the first drawing is only going to be 30 seconds long. You're not going to have very long to draw it. You're really just going to be looking at the general shape you see, maybe the outer shape, maybe a tiny little bit on the inside. You're going to then draw a second time for 1 minute. This minute is going to allow you to spend more time looking on the interior shapes, what's happening on the middle of the picture or the object that you're looking at. And finally, you're going to draw it a third time for 3 minutes. And this 3-minute drawing is where you're really going to start to notice all kinds of details. Are there different textures on different parts of the object? Are there shadows? Is there a part of the object where there's maybe a rip or a tear or a hole? Are there different colors? So we're going to be drawing this 3 times. I'm going to set my timer and I will give you a heads up when we are nearing the end of each of our 3 drawings. So again, this first one is for 30 seconds. Let's get our pencil and paper out, and here we go. So you've only got 30 seconds, so it's a quick rough sketch, general shapes. What is the object that you're looking at? Got about 10 seconds left. And that's it, 30 seconds done. So let's set that first drawing aside. We're now going to do our second drawing for 1 minute, starting now. So you can start off again with that general shape, then you can use the rest of the minute to start looking at some of those details on the inside. For example, I'm seeing lots of leaf veins, those long lines running through the leaf. But the more I look at this leaf, the more of those veins I see. At first, I see just the 5 vein ones, and there's all kinds of little itty bitty ones connecting as well. I also noticed that this leaf has an incredible diversity of colors. If you've just got a pencil, maybe you can't show all the colors, but that's okay. You can still notice we've got colors happening all across the leaf. And just like that, our 1 minute is done. So set aside that second drawing, and now we're going to pull out a different part of your paper, another paper, for our 3-minute drawing, starting now. So we're starting again, probably with that general shape, maybe adding in some of the details that you saw in that second drawing. But now we can really start to explore all the different textures and shadows and lines that we see throughout this leaf. I'm starting to notice that there's a big difference in the tip of each of the parts of the leaf. They're not all pointing the same direction. Some of them are pointing off to the left, some are pointing to the right, some are longer than others. If you have color, you can add color. If you don't, you can start looking at some of those shadows. Where are we seeing the leaf raised and where are we seeing it lower? We're about a minute through. Another thing I'm noticing is that I can see those teeny tiny leaf veins much clearer in the green part on the right and a lot less clear in the yellow part on the left. Wonder if the veins are just harder to see in the yellow part because of the color, or maybe they've dried out and we actually can't see them at all. If we were holding this leaf, I might hold it up to the light at this point to see if I could find those veins. We're 2 minutes in, so 1 minute left. The more I stare at this leaf, the more I'm also noticing there's lots of little spots. It's almost like little yellow circles kind of throughout the green part of the leaf, or little specks of black up near the tips of the green parts of the leaf. Makes me wonder what those are. Could they be something from a bug left behind? Or maybe parts where the leaf is drying out? We've got 20 seconds left. No worries if you don't fully complete your drawing. The whole point of this was just to make observations, and hopefully you've been noticing all kinds of things in this last drawing that you didn't notice in those first 30 seconds. And we're gonna stop drawing for now. So fantastic, you've just done your observational sketches. Now this is something you can do with any object that you find. It's a great way to warm up your drawing, and it's a great way to notice more and more and more about something that you're looking at. We are going to move on now to our third and final activity together, which is poetry. Now, poetry is a really great way to record what we're observing, because poetry allows us to really explore colorful language and metaphor and simile, and it can get really, really descriptive. Poetry is also a great way to help us observe how we feel, to observe our own emotions, which is a very important piece of information and a very interesting thing to notice when we're out in different sit spots. Do you feel different when you're in your backyard, when you're at a park, when you're at a bus stop? Poetry can help us think about that. So I'm going to share with you 3 different poetry forms. We're going to go through 2, and the third one I'll kind of leave you to look at on your own, but all 3 of them are on the poetry forms worksheet that was sent out to you. One thing to always remember about poetry, there are rules. For example, in this one, I'll share with you exactly how to make an acrostic, but poetry is an art form. So always remember that you are the poet, you are the artist, and feel free to break those rules whenever you feel like it will make your poem better. So, an acrostic. An acrostic is a really simple poem, a great way to start off if you're feeling unsure. Basically, you take a word, and every line in that poem starts with one of the letters of the word. So for example, my poem here on the right, you can see I've written a poem about the word clouds. So we have condensation in fluffy shapes, lazily drifting through the blue, over our heads, up, 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 so high. Do you see a cat too, sleeping in the sky? Now I've written full phrases in my acrostic. You could write whole sentences. You could also just write one word for each line. It's up to you. Another really fun poem form is called a triant. Triant like triangle, because you'll notice that the poem there on the right actually looks like a triangle. And this triant poem is using sense words. So line 1 is the title or the subject. What is our poem about? Line 2, you're going to write 2 words that describe the smell. Line 3, you're going to write 3 words that describe the touch or what it feels like. Line 4, you'll have 4 words that describe what it looks like. And line 5, you'll have 5 words that describe what it sounds like. Now again, we're going to be doing a virtual sit spot today, so in a moment I'll be showing you a video that we're going to be writing our poems about. We probably won't be able to know what the video smells like or feels like, but let's use our imagination. And here is a diamant poem, diamant like diamond. You can see we've got a diamond shape. It's a little bit more complicated, so I'll leave that up to you if you want to dive into the diamant poem. And we are going to now queue up the next video. It's about 5 minutes long, and you are going to have that time to write one or many poems about what you see. So if we could show the peer poem. We're going to take just 15 more seconds. All right, and we're going to finish up our poetry for the moment and just for the sake of time. So hopefully you got an idea of what writing poems would feel like in your sit spot. And remember that there's all kinds of other poetry forms out there if you want to keep experimenting with that. The last couple things I want to mention are that if you get really excited about sit spots and you want more ideas of what to do, again, you can find us on YouTube. We're the Fraser River Discovery Centre there, and we've got all kinds of videos which go more into depth on doing these activities and more at your sit spot. There's also a fantastic book called Keeping a Nature Journal by Charles E. Roth and Claire Leslie. And finally, please connect with us. So you can find us at the FRDC on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and at our website, FraserRiverDiscovery.org, where we have more teaching resources, online programs, information about our field trips, and tons of cool stuff. So that's the end of our intro to sit spots. And if you have any questions, I'd love to take them now.
Danika, what a fun presentation. I love the commentary in the chat, so thank you guys for participating both live and on YouTube. I've got all those links up in the broadcast. We'll be bringing them up in banners throughout the remainder of the program. And in the chat and on YouTube, you guys have the Fraser River Discovery Centre YouTube channel. Say that 5 times fast. If you guys want to keep the learning going, lots of great stuff there. So guys, we're going to dive in with questions. If you're on YouTube, you want to share questions in the chat or share anything that you guys drew or wrote, feel free to come up. Obviously, we'd love to hear your thoughts and see what you guys created today. And we're going to head to our live classes. So, Madam Wood's class, if you guys want to kick us off, they're joining us today in Toronto, grade 3-4s. Come on up and kick us off. Hello, Ms. Wood's class. Guys.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Oliver, do you want to come up? Thanks for the presentation.
My pleasure.
I have a student who has a question.
How do you bring all this stuff when it's in the winter?
How do you do all this stuff in the winter? What a great question. So depending on where you live, winter can be, just a little bit of rain. It can be a ton of snow. So I would just make sure that you are totally prepared when you go outside. If you have to have 7 jackets on, that's what you can do. But actually, if you can wear enough clothes, if you can be warm enough and comfortable out in the winter, winter is an incredible time to notice things happening in nature because everything's a little bit quieter, a little bit slower. So what you do see, you really get to notice.
Fantastic question, guys. All right, let's head to Miss Wallace's class. They're joining us at Huntley Centennial Public School. Welcome in, guys, and come on in.
Thank you. This is Abigail. Go ahead, Abigail, and ask your question.
Why did you pick Fraser River to observe?
Oh, why did I pick the Fraser River to observe? Well, mostly because I work at the Fraser River Discovery Centre. So it's just right outside my window here. It's an amazing river that we love to teach about here at our Discovery Centre. And it's also a really big river. So I can go all up and down the Fraser River. I can make observations all the way up at the headwaters and at the mouth, and I can see differences there. But mostly it's because it's where I work.
Yeah. I love this, and I think it's so important. You open up the broadcast with the idea that all of us have nature around us. And again, whether that's a schoolyard or a backyard close to nature areas, you guys can literally look on a map and find local parks. These are great places to do sit spots. For me, about 10 minutes away, right on Lake Ontario here in St. Catharines. It's a beautiful spot to sit, see how plants change, see things in the water, see birds. So find those places near you, and we'd love to see what you guys can share after the fact. And if you want to share them with us on social media or an email, we'd love to see all your findings. All right, Miss Lagerquist, they're joining us in Markham today. Their devices aren't working well. Welcome in, guys, grade 5s, and they want to know if you know who made the first sound map. I like this question. It might be a bit tricky.
Just to clarify, are you asking the first person who thought of making a sound map or of the 3 that I showed you who drew those?
Yeah, I think the first one ever. Like if there's a
goodness.
Yeah.
I have no idea. That is such a fantastic question. It's something that was taught to me by other people that I've worked with in the past, but I love the question. I've never actually even thought about that before, and I would be excited if you could find the answer to that.
There you go. I'm going to try and search on Google while we're chatting over the rest of the broadcast, see if we can find that. But really, systematic nature observation is not, it's something that is sort of instinctual to so many people that have been around the world since, humankind evolved. But in terms of scientifically doing this and putting it in journals and highlighting things, I can think of Audubon. I can think of some other really fantastic people in the last few hundred years that have done some really great work. But I'll try and find more on the sound map for your class. Thanks, Ms. Lagerquist. All right, Mr. Flispin's class, welcome in, guys, and come on up. If you have a question for us or want to show us anything you guys shared, you're all in. Just unmute your mic. There you go. Perfect, guys. Hey, guys in the background. Awesome. And if you don't have a question now, that's totally fine too, but welcome in.
I don't think they have a question quite yet. They're still figuring it out.
Perfect. Take your time, figure it out. You can let me know in the chat if you do have one, and I'll come to you guys in just a minute. For now, let's head to North Hollywood, California. Mr. Pettix is grade 3s. Do you guys have any questions or anything you want to share with Danika today?
Yeah, we have Alexis is going to come up and ask a question.
Why do we need supplies for sit spots?
Could you repeat that question?
Yeah.
Why do we need supplies for sit spots?
Supplies?
Yeah.
Ooh, great question. So, to some extent, you don't need any supplies. If you just went out to your sit spot and you sat and you looked and you listened and you observed, you'd get a lot out of it that way too. If you want to go deeper into your sit spot, if you want to investigate the bugs that you see crawling under a log, or if you want to set up an experiment, or if you want to take pictures, all the supplies that you bring with you just give you more options of things to do at your sit spot. So the first time you go out, you may bring nothing, and that's totally great. And the second, third, fourth time you go out, you may realize like, oh, actually, I'd love to do an experiment where I see how long it takes this leaf to decompose, or I'd love to paint this tree with some oil paints that I have. So those supplies give you more options, but you can figure out what you'd like to do as you go along.
Fantastic. All right, we're going to take a couple questions from YouTube, and then we're going to wrap up with a couple live. Time flies and you're having fun in these programs. So Ms. Bloom's class, they're joining us in Ottawa today. They want to know, do students using sit spots have an impact on the environment? I have a follow-up to this after your answer. I'm curious what you have to say, though.
Again, just wanted to clarify, do you mean does going to a sit spot harm the environment, or does it help the environment?
Yeah, there's no clarification just in
Right.
I'm guessing harm, but if you want to do the help, that was the element I was going to take. So
Yeah, well, let's go with both then. So you do have to be careful when you go to a sit spot if you're worrying that bringing students to a sit spot could be harmful to the place that you're going. So you want to find a place where you're not going to need to, clear a spot for you to sit. Maybe sit on a log. Find a spot that's not too far off a path, so you're not thrashing through the woods to get there. So definitely be mindful of how you're physically being in nature. We want to have as little impact as possible. But I think the second part of that question, could they have a positive impact on nature? I think absolutely, because the more we know about something, the more we can notice changes and help if help is needed. So right now, as I'm sure we all know, climate change is a big deal, and it's causing huge changes to the environment around us. But it's causing changes to the environment directly around us as well. And one way you can really notice what impacts climate change is having is through something like a sit spot. So for example, I had a sit spot that I kept for many years, and I noticed a big difference between the spring of the first year that I did my sit spot and the spring of the second year that I did my sit spot. Things happened much earlier. The weather behaved very differently. Sit spots help us notice patterns, and then they help us notice when those patterns change.
Fantastic. One of the things I always like to highlight with climate change is that for many students, it's something that you hear about in the news, maybe you hear about it in some of our programs. And one thing that you can do is talk to your teachers, talk to your parents. I mean, in my lifetime alone, having just grown up and seen what the weather is like where I am, it's changed so radically. In 20 years, it's so different than it was. And this is something that you can get firsthand experience by talking to people that are a little bit older in your life. And this is where the concept of a sit spot is so, so important. So I'm so glad we got that question. All right, I'm going to take one more from YouTube and then Miss Pereira to wrap up in Chicago. Miss Nagel's class wants to know, and again, back to your beginning of your program, should your sit spot be in the same location all the time, Danika?
Great question. So if you keep your sit spot in the same location, it's going to allow you to notice those patterns much easier, because you're going to be able to say, every time I come to this one sit spot, I can see this one tree, and I can see how the tree is behaving in the spring versus in the winter, and I can notice the same animals coming back, all those kinds of things. If you go to different sit spots, that allows you to maybe make comparisons between 2 different places, 3 different places. You just won't get that same understanding of patterns over time. You won't get to know each place as deeply as if you go to the same location each time. So I would recommend returning to just one location, but having multiple sit spots has its benefits as well.
Fantastic. A very nuanced answer. All right, let's head to Illinois. Chicago, come on in, Miss Pereira's group to wrap us up today.
Yeah.
Hi.
Can you see it? Yes.
Hi, I'm Anthony.
Hi.
And my question is, how much time do you have to wait before you go to the same sit spot again?
Really good question. How much time should you wait? How often should you go? I will say as often as you can. If you can only make it out once a season, every 3 months, that's totally okay. If you can go out every week or every day, you're going to get to know that place a lot deeper. So as often as you can is fantastic.
Outstanding, guys. I know we could go all day with great questions from all you guys live and on YouTube, but what I want to do is wrap up the broadcast pretty soon and make sure that you guys have the resources you need to keep the excitement going. So Danika was great and highlighted a bunch of great things. If you want to check out that book, Keeping a Nature Journal by Charles Roth and Claire Leslie, is a really great resource. And of course, most importantly, head to the FRDC on Twitter, go to fraserriverdiscovery.org, check them out on YouTube, which again, I put the link in the chat live here on StreamYard, and for our YouTube viewers, lots of great opportunities and so much more to discover. There's such an amazing place at the Fraser River Discovery Centre. Danika, is there a last message you want to leave all our excited kids with today before we wrap up?
Yeah, I hope you all enjoy going out to your sit spots, and I hope you notice all kinds of new and surprising things.
Awesome. All right. Well, as you know from your first broadcast with us, how we end every session is to bring in all our teachers to say a big thank you and farewell. So Mr. Flispin, Miss Woods, Miss Wallace, Mr. Pettix, Miss Pereira, if you guys want to join me in saying a big thank you, Danika, you are good to go. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye for now.